As Myanmar plunges into more political turmoil, in his first public address, the acting leader of the new civilian government has vowed to pursue a revolution to overturn the military junta. The speech came amid nationwide protests and the crackdown by the authorities, which has resulted in more than 80 deaths now. Many others have been left injured as police fired live ammunition at the anti-coup demonstrators.
Se anashe seniye pini mu myozongo se suni myaza kanza lage yare daina nigo maunuma mya alo ye lo la taung da che phit de Federal Democracy Pirong Suji ti thong yi twet jano ro alo atu to kwa let twe bi chu ban song yet ne me akhwe yi teyat le phit pare jano ni ne di ye rong ji twe ma pidu lu tu ko aka kwe pe nai mu tat swan thmya josa song yet twa ba me Yudure Mimi go Kuga na yedwe, lower the Urigo, Pirong Zulu dogo goes up you hare, Pirong Zulu dog goes up you complica, yes, web Yatampi Joban Sometama Pibare.
Despite fears of getting arrested and tortured, the leader came out of hiding to address the people via Facebook. The address was significant for strengthening the resolve of all those who have been protesting since the military seized power in the nation on the 1st of February this year, detaining Suu Kyi and other members of her party. Man Win Klang Khan was appointed last week as acting vice president by representatives of Myanmar's ousted lawmakers, a body which is pushing for recognition as the rightful government in Myanmar. Hundreds of citizens defied an 8 p.m. curfew for the second night in a row to hold a candlelight vigil in Yangon. It was held at Ledan Junction, which has for weeks become a hotspot for unrest. As you can see, the protesters held candles to mourn those killed in anti-coup demonstrations and the violent crackdown on these anti-coup protesters, including 2 NLD officials. While others banged pots and pans, which has now become a nightly act to show resistance against the military junta. The crowd sang songs and arranged candles around a red banner with RIP written in white. There were multiple reports on social media of the deaths, along with photos of the dead and wounded people in both the locations. The military, on the other hand, has denied responsibility for the loss of life in the protests. It has also defended seizing power by alleging widespread electoral fraud in November's election, which Suu Kyi's party won in a landslide. Now, we must remind our viewers that Myanmar's Election Commission had rubbished all allegations of voter fraud during the elections. Despite that, the military seized power on the 1st of February. It has continued its policy of violent crackdown on the anti-coup demonstrators. More than 80 people have lost their lives so far. Joining us on this broadcast now is Phil Robertson, who's the Deputy Director at the Asia Division of Human Rights Watch. Phil, thank you so much for giving us your time on WION. Now, we saw a civilian leader come forward and promise a, quote, revolution against the military junta. Does this revolution have enough support?
I think that there's very clear support amongst the Burmese people for the civil disobedience movement. And certainly this political leader is one of the people who are part of the CRPH, which is the de facto parliament composed of elected parliamentarians who are not allowed to take their seats. They are seen as the legitimate government of Myanmar, and I think that they will have the support of the protesters and the people out on the streets going forward. He's very brave to come out. I'm sure that there's going to be a manhunt for him by the military and the police. And I'm sure that there will be no effort spared by the military to try to shut down similar pronunciations in the future.
Phil, very quickly, what's the situation regarding this civil disobedience movement that Myanmar leaders have promised and the people of Myanmar have promised? We're getting reports that in Monya town in central Myanmar, it has declared that it has formed its own local government and its own local police force. So this is another sort of civil disobedience that we are seeing, and this report is coming from Moniwa township in central Myanmar. Do you expect more and more townships and cities to break away and try and form their own government?
I think that this is the form that we will see as local officials decide that they no longer want to follow the military. That they will try to create safe zones for themselves and the people in those areas. I'm not sure how successful it will be, but I think that what we're seeing is a growing movement that has effectively shut down the economy of Myanmar. There's not a lot of reporting coming out, but basically the banks aren't functioning, the trains aren't functioning, the planes, all sorts of transport, basic facilities of the economy are not functioning, in part because it's been shut down to deny it to the military. This is the people's weapon. It's the mass strike. And so far, it's been very, very effective in stymieing the military. And what they're doing now is trying to force people back to work, raiding rail yards and other various establishments to try to force people to go back to work. And it's not happening.
Phil, we are seeing these really powerful visuals coming out of Myanmar, hundreds of thousands of people out on the streets holding candlelight marches to honor the dead, flashing their mobile phones, holding the three-finger salutes. They are bringing the world's attention to what's exactly happening on the ground in Myanmar. But it's been over a month and a half now. More than 80 people have been killed during the violent crackdown on anti-coup protesters. More than 2,000 people have been detained. International pressure, it seems, is not changing much on the ground in Myanmar.
Well, we haven't seen the kind of international pressure that we need. We're still waiting for the European Union to come with their targeted economic sanctions. That's been now promised for 2 weeks. We want to see more action by other like-minded governments. But I think it's important to understand that this is a real tug of war between the people of Myanmar and the military and police. On one hand, you have the people prepared to protest for as long as it takes, despite very, very serious problems that causes for them in terms of their livelihoods and their ability to do things, but also the military, which is prepared to kill as many people as it feels it needs to try to restore order. It is a deadly struggle, and I think this is why we cannot wait for the international community to come in and make up their mind. They have to act now. And that's what the people of Myanmar have been calling for. That's what they're saying on Twitter, and that's what they're saying on social media every day as more and more people are shot down.
Phil, very quickly, one final question. We saw the civilian leader come forward, promise a revolution against the military junta, but this civilian leadership is also eyeing recognition. Will it get it?
Well, I think that we're going to see a credentials fight at the UN General Assembly. The ambassador who has defected to the democracy forces is saying he's not going anywhere. And I think it's very likely that he may be able to hold on to that seat, which is probably the most important diplomatic post for Myanmar at this point. So I think that that's going to be a major test case to see what the international community is prepared to do in terms of recognition of the democracy forces.
Phil Robertson, thank you so much for joining us on WION and giving your insight on the situation in Myanmar. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.